it's interesting, the importance of the land that you're talking about. You said 500 acres of land. What do they do with it now?
Well, we farmed it when I was a kid.
Right, you farmed it.
But now that they cut timber on it, they folks hunt.
Right, and so they still. Then you come up north, and then it became a big thing to have a land that you didn't use. That you just had land that you mow and land that you make look beautiful, and that was the way that you establish yourself. You have a beautiful yard. Go to the south, the land meant that you were part of the economy. It meant that you grew things. It's just interesting to look at the way that the land transforms when you go from the south to the north, as does everything.
Yeah. Part of the problem, of course, too, is in the north, our blood wasn't in the soil.
Right. That's right.
In the south, our blood is mingled within the soil itself, so that we have a spiritual and a biological tie to this soil. Right. And what it does in its inheritance.
Yeah, absolutely. You're living off the soil, and you're actually, as you said, there's life in the soil to begin with.
Yes,
and death,
yeah,
and death, yeah.
Nah, I'm doing this introduction. This is like
so we're continuing the conversation. So we're doing a continuation of the last episode.
Yeah. I feel like that was the preface to what I'm expecting today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were talking about hip hop and N-word and the freedom, liberation to use the word as freely as we'd like to, and we didn't get a chance to finish our conversation. But I would love to pose to you the question that I posed to Candace that we didn't, time ran out of Candace really being able to answer the question. But since we have you here, I'd love to kind of get your take on, with the freedom and the liberation of taking the N-word back, if you will, because we will introduce you formally in a bit, but because you are a professor, you do interact with young people on a daily basis. Yeah. What impact do you see, if any, that hip hop and the context of hip hop and the use of nigga and bitch and what I see as perpetuating the degradation of
I didn't say anything.
But in terms of music that from my perspective promotes the degradation of Black culture, right? Or rather of Black people. But I'm just curious because you interface with young people on a daily basis. I'm just curious as to what your take is on its impact on young people.
Well, the first thing I think I'd say is when we talk about taking the word back, I want us first to get clear from whom are we taking it, right? And why would we? And I think we first need to be very careful and very clear about our desire, right? This desirability aspect, right? Why do we desire so many things that actually seek to degrade and demean us? Part of it is because the desirability factor comes from this notion that anything Europeans possess, anything they possess, houses, land, materiality, right, is actually blessed, is actually a good thing. And so part of the problem is that we wanted anything that they desire. And part of what they desire is our degradation.
Wow.
And so it makes us desire our own degradation, we think, in exchange for the exaltation, right, of materiality, right? In other words, just like the plantation, cars, big houses, etc., come at the expense of Black degradation. And most people, including Black folks now, are willing to pay that cost if it's in exchange for what seems to be the elevation and the exaltation of the self. Because that's ultimately the American dream. The American dream actually is for one to be exalted. Who you have to be exalted over is what we never discuss because most people don't want to know and we don't really care, right? It's who, but we do the same thing even in the spirit realm, right? You know, when we pray, we bow our heads because we think God is above us, right? Which in and of itself is problematic, right? That means God is not you. That means God is outside of you, right? I think in a minute when we get liberated, we'll begin to understand that the last thing you should do is close your eyes when you go to God.
Yo, how long is that minute?
Did I have a minute?
No. You said in a minute when we get liberated. I was like,
well,
great.
that minute is a long
beautiful.
time.
Yeah.
and the minute's going to be a God minute.
And the minute's going to be longer as long as we love what oppression breeds. Wow.
So, love what oppression breeds.
As long as we want the same materiality as the people who brought us here, the minute is going to continue to be extended. See, liberty, you were talking about liberty and freedom is not the right or the willingness to do whatever one chooses. Freedom is understanding the place and the point of limitation and how limitations actually set you free.
But if you have someone that says, I find this word or anything to be offensive or that came to me in a way that was not for me to begin with, I am now a gatekeeper of that word for myself. So now...
Of the word nigga.
Of the word nigga, exactly. Mm-hmm. Or anything else that you might find that once was not ours that we choose to possess. Now we have the right to possess it and be the gatekeeper of it. And I think that's how a lot of people look at the word, look at anything that, any of the things that you were talking about that really did not belong to us. Well, let's take it back. Now let's be the gatekeeper. And again, you don't own it.
Right. The problem, though, is we're taking it back from somebody who constructed it in order to demean you.
But we're also taking back that demeaning.
So what if it was never there? How about that?
But
what if it was never there?
They used it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a bigger issue.
But it's a word.
Right.
Somebody owns it? Nah.
Much more importantly,
how about it's just a word out there? Yo, we're gonna use it. We're gonna use it differently.
Sure we can. We can. It's true, brother. We can. My question is, why would we and why do we? Because in other words, I'm wondering when it comes time for me to think of how I want to honor you, right? Mm-hmm. Why would I go to them, right? Why would I go to their construction? Why would I go to their history when I want to conceive a way to honor you? Why wouldn't my imagination serve me?
So I should call you niggas.
No.
Right?
No.
King?
No. And we don't need king either, because all of these are patriarchal tropes, right? That really serve ultimately to set us up to do the same power structures. What I'm saying, what I'm saying ultimately is, why wouldn't I go into my imaginative reservoir to conceive a brand new term that they've never heard and you haven't either, when it comes time for me to tell you how much I adore you? Why wouldn't my imagination serve me? Why would I have to resurrect the dead, so to speak, in terms of the word nigga, right, in order for me to call you my brother?
Why would we have to resurrect the word when there are other words that are out there?
But that's my point.
Yeah. Sure.
Or
create another one.
Or create another one. Like, I'm sorry, why would we create another word?
Absolutely.
So I have to I have to interject for a second. For those of you who are listening and or watching this podcast, of course you'll see this is Not All Hood with Malcolm Jamal Warner. And of course this episode is going to say with Dr. Daniel Black. So for those of you who have not decided to Google Dr. Daniel Black before watching or listening to this podcast, I want to take the great pleasure to introduce this incredibly brilliant man. He is a dear friend of mine. We met over a couple of years ago.
That's right.
Through poet Mark Bamuthi Joseph. Shout out to Bamuthi. Because I'm so glad for this introduction.
Yeah.
I'm going to read because it could be more concise than.
Got those reading glasses.
Yeah, it's real. It is real. So Dr. Daniel Black, PhD, is author, professor, consultant, and mentor. Dear friend, Baba, brother. He is also the professor of African American Studies at Clark Atlanta University. We talked about my last album, Hiding in Plain View, Grammy-nominated album.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And an incredibly important album with regards to social consciousness.
Absolutely.
I attribute a lot of that to Dr. Black's presence on the album because he's all throughout the album. It was only supposed to be on one tune.
That's right.
We had a conversation, and there's this music bed on the song Asante Sana. Long music bed. I wanted to have Dr. Black speaking. I took an excerpt from a conversation that we had, but the conversation was so long, and he dropped so many gems that I put him all throughout the album.
Wow.
And I honestly attribute the importance of that album to Dr. Black's contribution. So it is really an honor and a pleasure to have Baba Black as our first guest on Not All Hood.
Yes. Black on black on black on black on black.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yes.
Yes.
So I'll start, I'll give the official introduction. Dr. Black is a third-year professor of African American Studies at Clark Atlanta University. He is also an award-winning novelist, activist, mentor, and public speaker. His published works include They Tell Me of Home, The Sacred Place, Perfect Peace, 12 Gates to the City, The Coming, which you have not read, will change your fucking life. Yeah, you need that. You need your life change, Grace. Listen to the Lambs, Don't Cry for Me, and the most recent Black on Black, on Black on Black on Black on Black. In 2014, he won the Distinguished Writers Award from the Mid-Atlantic Writers Association. The Go On Girl National Book Club named him Author of the Year in 2011 for his best-selling novel, Perfect Peace. Whew, that's a beast. Oh my gosh, that's a beast of a novel as well. Perfect Peace was also chosen as the 2014 selection for If All Arkansas Read the Same Book by the Arkansas Center for the Book at Arkansas State Library. I should have read this first, right? Out loud
the
first.
Glasses? I don't know.
It might be the glasses.
I think it's the glasses.
Well,
Maybe
that's
glasses.
worse. Whoa. The novel has been reprinted more than 10 times and is being heralded as an American literary classic. Dr. Black has been nominated 3 times for the Townsend Literary Prize, the Ernest J. Gaines Award, the Farrell Grumley Literary Prize, the Lambda Literary Award, the Georgia Author of the Year Prize, and the Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award.
Is the show over? I think they took up the time.
I know, right? I know. So with all of that, just, we don't even have enough time on this episode to delve into everything that Dr. Black encompasses. So as he's speaking, I just want you to know, the wealth of information, the treasure trove of information and history and knowledge that Dr. Black has as we, continue to talk about this subject
That we all have.
Yeah.
So it's an honor to have you.
The honor's mine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks
so much. We
Absolutely.
appreciate you
And
being here.
when I was reading, actually listening on audio, as I told you before, same thing, black on black on black. You just took us on a journey from your youth to where you are today, really. And I just think it's interesting to hear you talk about what we've talked about so far and try to figure out what media influences, because we're talking about music.
Sure.
Then we also we have to talk about literature and talk about movies.
Right. Right.
And growing up, what do you think influenced you to get you right here with that long introduction?
I think, first, I would say the Black church. I grew up in the church. I was a church musician when I was 5 years old. I played piano, organ, all of that. And the church showed me many things and planted many seeds in my life that I had no idea would come to pass in the way it has. The church introduced me to African culture. The Black church doesn't really even know itself, but the Black church is really the keeper of African culture.
What kind of church was this?
It was a Baptist church in name.
Okay.
Right. And I underline that because, these denominations are really kind of pseudo covers, really for African ritual is what we're doing in these places. Right. So I learned polyrhythmic structures in the Black church. I learned the beauty of idiomatic expressions in the Black church. I learned the rhythmic nature of hooping in the Black church. Right.
Yeah.
I learned how dance and music and word all coexist, right, in harmony in the Black church. I learned notions of protocol in the Black church in terms of what is correct and what is not correct. I also learned extreme notions of respectability politics in the Black church, right, which is problematic, right? But we have to be very careful because the fact that there are problematic things to a space does not mean that it is not divine,
Right.
right? Because if that's true, we would throw away nature.
That's right.
Right. Because
We would throw away everything,
yes,
really.
Yes. Because we prefer sunshine to storms, but storms do a work.
Right.
Right. But storms are not what we like. So because a thing isn't necessarily pleasurable does not mean it's not doing a work culturally.
Right.
Right. And the point of respectability politics, which was definitely problematic, but it was also salvific in some ways, because respectability politics was also saying unto a people, listen, guard your excellence. Because if you don't guard your excellence, these people will rename your excellence trash. There's all kinds of ways we did this. And there are ways that we threw away some of our excellence because other folks did not see the excellence in it. For example, we out here, we know the difference between dressing and stuffing. We don't want one of them. And there's one of them we definitely want.
Right.
We can, upon sight, see, we know the difference between locks and braids instantaneous.
So I got a confession.
Yeah.
You like dressing and stuffing?
I don't know what the difference.
All right. Well,
Don't
then
say
we.
that loud. Don't say that loud.
It's the same. Like,
No, sir.
I don't think I've ever had. Like, what's the difference?
Oh, wow.
Well, and you're from the South, right? Oh, you could break it down.
Ish.
Yeah.
Ish.
Okay.
Oh, but see, but this is why this is so
Right,
amazing.
but yes,
This-
it
this-
is.
It's like we know the difference between cleaning up, right, and straightening up.
That is true.
Yeah,
You know what? The etymology, you just breaking it down.
Exactly.
But that is true.
Yes.
That is true.
Which is why when
When
they
my mama
wanted,
said clean up. Clean up.
yes,
Straighten
But
up.
straightening up
is not the same thing.
straightening up is like
Just-
a cousin to tidy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
real quick, because
Real
somebody's on
quick.
their way now.
Cleaning up.
Okay.
It's gonna take you the day to do
Yeah.
it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got this. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now they call it deep cleaning.
Right.
Sprinkling, right.
Yeah.
Which is why when white folks wanted something done well, they looked for black people.
Wow.
Because we knew the nuances of excellence,
Yes.
right? And we brought that with us to this land, which is why they came to get us in the first place.
Right, exactly.
Because they had visited Africa and they saw things that they had never even imagined.
That's right.
Right. And so I'm saying all of this simply to say that, the question of what I was taught, and I was taught this by people who thought they were poor. Right. And even now, part of the problem is that we as Black people, we think we're poor. Right. We're not actually poor. Sometimes we are economically disadvantaged, but we are not poor people. But see, as long as you use the language, you also get the mentality along with it. Right? And that's extreme.
Which is harder to change, that mentality.
Exactly.
Right.
It's, even the notion of white folks, thinking they're wealthy. Most white people are actually impoverished in spirit.
So it's about the idea also what is valuable, right? Is it financial or the materialism, or is there, spiritual wealth and community capital, right? And
And
things
what
we find
impresses
value in, right?
Right. And what impresses God is the question.
That's a whole nother thing because we got to get to that level too.
But that's
right.
that historically was Black people's thing, which is why we didn't leave the plantation killing up white folks. Because Black people wanted to impress God. We wanted to be in good with God. And to be in good with God, we had to walk in character regardless of how people treated us. That was not from the Bible.
Right.
People think we inherited that, but that was not from the Bible. That comes from African people's cultural mandate, right? In terms of the ethic of being. We believe that how you treat people, right, is essentially how the universe is going to treat you.
Right.
So what was Nat Turner thinking? I'm just asking.
Yes. First of all, I think Nat Turner was a divine angel.
Right? Hallelujah.
So it's in terms of his revolt, right? In terms of honoring God, that was a different journey.
I think it definitely honored God.
Sometimes you gotta flip the tables.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I'm not sure. I don't. When I teach this in my class, I don't use the word revolt.
Okay.
Right. I say Nat Turner's statement. Right? Because revolt suggests, right, that he's fighting against something instead of he's actually making an announcement to black children.
But it's both of them.
About what they're worth.
He's fighting against something and he's fighting for something at the same time. Right?
Well, I could walk with that. I could walk with that. The thing I want us to do actually is just begin to define things in such a way where we actually get the black spirit out of it instead of defining things in reaction to whiteness as the focal referent of our existence.
Right.
Right.
I just going back when we're talking about the African tradition, right, and how we treat people. Oh, so the tribal warfare.
Sure.
So how does that play out when we think about there was before colonization there was tribal warfare?
Sure, absolutely, and a lot of it was absolutely problematic. And this is extremely important because a lot of our behavior as African people was against our own cultural mandates, which is one of the reasons I argue to students that our enslavement came not because of Europeans. Our enslavement came because we stepped outside of our own cultural mandates.
Say that once again.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, because processing.
Yes, it wasn't white. In fact, we can let white folks off. We can let them go in terms of this conversation, in this argument. Really, it's actually because what our Proverbs told us to do, we neglected. Right. And so we had to pay our own price.
And their Proverbs was
right. And those Proverbs was this notion of honoring elders, this notion of being respectful unto the land, respectful unto the earth, etc. These were the things that our culture, right, that our Proverbs taught us to do. And not to kill, not to take more fish out of the river than needed to be taken, etc. But greed, right, got us too, right? And so what I'm saying is, and I think this is extremely important, and that is really what we had to pay for was literally neglecting our own spiritual systems.
Wow. Jeez.
So I'm the anti guy here, right?
Why would you be?
Well, it's not anti. Let me say the alternative thing. All right, no, because I think that like the things that stood out about the statements you just said, were the slavery piece,
sure.
And yes, we're definitely implicit, right? But I also feel like there was a history of slavery that was different from the slavery that happened here,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Chattel slavery versus right.
So white folks just took it to him like they was just crazy with it.
It's true,
right?
It's true.
It's
absolutely true.
And some of
that came after
some of
stepping out of our alignment.
But was it? Because I'm like you said, we are not a monolith, right? There's going to be conflict. That's the nature of man, right?
Humans.
Yes. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Right.
Many people thank you.
The nature of humans, right? We are gonna be issues. The principles of the ancient principles, right? The Ma'at, all that, right?
Sure.
We're still somewhat in a line, right, with slavery, in a sense, right?
I'm not sure I follow that.
There, conflicts and slavery were a part of the history of on the continent.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Were those things out of line with hit mics? Well, those things align with our spiritual practice.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And the bigger thing, right, that's probably the hardest pill to swallow is whatever white folks were, and I'm agreeing with you completely, white folks have done some insane, everywhere white folks have gone, they've wreaked havoc. It is true. The thing that's messing us up, though, is there's nothing white folks have ever done or conceived that is stronger than Black resilience.
Okay.
That's the problem. In other words, we don't need white supremacy to move at all if Black folks want to revolutionize. White supremacy can stay exactly what it is.
And let's just do our thing.
And we could do our thing. Our problem is us thinking we need white people's vote, right, in order for us to do it.
You about to go into politics too?
Right. That's the problem. And we think we need it in the spirit realm even.
Right.
We think we need white people's vote even to get into heaven. That's why
That's
everything's
so weird
white
to me.
there.
Like, that's so weird to me.
Everything's white in heaven.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everything's white.
Not in my heaven.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like-
in all of ours. And here's how you know. And here's how you know. Because if it were not true, Jesus would be our first nigga.
Jesus is my nigga.
Right. Folks are not going to agree with you.
They don't got
He
to.
was like, we know
Right.
out there, folks are not going to agree.
Because part of the problem is, right, to call Jesus a nigga, right, presupposes many things, right? And the reason most people do not refer to Jesus as a nigga is because we see Jesus as divine.
But if you see the word as a position, a thing of power, as a thing of peace, as a piece of brotherhood, he is that.
Yeah, right. That's absolutely true.
So
that's absolutely
it's
true.
in
Do you see the N word as divine?
Do I see the N word as divine? Ooh.
I pray you do.
That's a good one. It's so I think language is blessed. I think that nigger can be used in a divine manner. I think that
That wasn't my question.
I'm gonna tell you what I'm appreciating about you, brother. There's something I'm appreciating. I'm appreciating your carefulness in that moment because that's a huge claim. That's a huge claim, and I'm appreciating your carefulness. I really am. I respect that because there are ways that yes, we've been trying to retrope the word nigga, right, to mean something beautiful and positive. But part of, I think, right, that act itself is the quintessential act of Black self-hatred. That's just my own
and I
position.
understand,
the act being-
and respect that.
The act being of us trying to
Embracing.
retrope
it.
the word nigga, right, is the quintessential act of self-hatred. Because I think that when a person comes to their oppressor, right, culturally speaking, to ask permission to borrow the terminology of that oppressor.
But asking permission, that's not what happened.
No. I'm saying metaphorically.
Right?
I'm saying metaphorically ask permission because we're saying we're taking the word back.
And
right. As if that's the only word we had. Right. In terms of speaking to one another. Right. And what I'm saying is when we start imagining each other, and when we start imagining how we want to refer to each other and how we want to talk to each other, I want us to have a term that is not heavy laden with white people's subjugation.
Right.
I want us to have a term, right, that I really want us to have a term that even white folks don't even know. That's really what I want.
Fact, I'm with you 110%.
Yeah. But nigga's not going to work because not only do they know it, they created it and conceived it.
So what's let's
Yes, now this
build.
is that's
Yeah,
right. That's
let's
now
build.
the question becomes then what can that
what's
term
that word?
be?
Right.
Yes.
Right. And therein is the liberty.
Right.
Therein is the liberty.
Wow.
And that is us giving ourselves permission to create it.
But you said we could create many things and not be limited. That white supremacy, white folks have nothing to do with it. We could do it on our own.
Absolutely.
Like they're building, the Freedom, Georgia, for example.
Right,
The way
right.
they're like, okay, we would just
Right.
build our own.
Right.
But even in that, you need some white folks in
Why?
terms of the way.
Do
well, I'm saying so if you take anybody that's looking at buying a home in Arkansas, okay, 'cause you're from Arkansas, you're going through some white folks somewhere. So I'm saying, and that white supremacy comes in when you might get denied that loan. That's what I'm saying. I'm wondering, the balance. Well, what are you?
And you don't necessarily have to go through white folks. Really, the issue here is that we as Black Americans, we cannot yet conceive of the universe without white inclusion.
I see.
Right, which means, and there are all kinds of ways we do this. For example, even in our schools, we teach French, English, we teach Spanish,
Russian,
right,
German.
In Black schools,
No Swahili.
right? We don't teach Swahili generally. We don't, but here's why. Why don't we teach Tree? Why don't we teach Swahili in Black schools? Because Black folks have not really imagined that these people need to have any conversation with us that's going to make any terminal difference.
And
We
I think it's
study
also-
Chinese in Black schools because we imagine, right, that there are Chinese folks one day who our kids will need to talk to. We cannot imagine that there is anybody speaking Swahili who Black kids one day must say anything to.
So that's a whole nother, I feel like, conversation about education system, right? Sort of talented 10th, with the class conflicts and things of that nature, right? And we're speaking about all these things from a somewhat elitist level, right? These are all very academic conversations we're having, right?
Yeah,
Somewhat.
You know what I mean?
Somewhat, yeah.
Right? Because, and I say that because, like, even when I'm saying, speaking on the use of the nigger or the N-word, I'm here almost as a representative of like kind of every man, right? Joe Schmo on the street, right?
What
Where-
makes you that? What makes you that? What makes you the representative? And I think it's perfectly fine. I'm just saying, like, why do you claim to be like representative of that group?
Just being a different voice in here, right?
Yeah, as opposed to Candace and I.
No, y'all can.
No. I mean,
No.
in terms of the representing every man versus because we are
Every man too.
in the entertainment industry.
Jim, maybe?
Yeah.
Is that your perspective?
Yeah.
Like so a non-entertainment industry person. I think that's what he's talking
Yeah.
about. Representing.
Oh, then that's me then.
Yeah. But you're an academic.
I was about to say you.
Yes, I
you're a
am.
Star
Right?
too. You got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And so and this is not because we are all that and
Right,
more,
right.
right?
Yes, but
Right.
see, what's tricky about this, though, brother, what's tricky about this is I think we only do this as Black people. Meaning, when white people gather, I don't think they ever wonder who isn't the intelligent one among them.
You know what?
Who isn't the academic?
Well-
Who is? I don't think they do that. And the reason they don't do that is because their whiteness is sufficient for all of them to be included in the room.
The whiteness is sufficient. See, I don't even think about white folks like that.
That's precisely my point. That's precisely my point.
But I think about Black folks like that, right? So, but
He's like,
but no.
"You're making my
But
point."
I think about that when we
He's like,
walk in the room.
Keep talking.
We are everything, right? We are more than sufficient. We are not all hood.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I'm the everyday man and I'm the academic.
Right.
But you
exactly.
know what? But
And
I think one of the differences is,
I agree.
as you said, white people don't get in a room and decipher all of this. This is a good example. I have a friend who, whenever she hears a story about something, it could be about a tornado hitting a company or somebody, a city or somebody's in a car accident or a podcast they listen to. First thing she wants to know is, were they white or were they Black? Because that changes things.
Sure.
So, and then you're saying though that in that context, we've been trained to look at it that way and then kind of put limitations on ourselves because we look at things in just inside of our Blackness. I'm trying to get it right.
Sure. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I'm
yeah,
saying. And I'm saying that these notions of different, these markers of difference,
Yeah.
right, do not bespeak one's inability or one's designation as being outside of any of the other categories.
categories.
Right.
Right. And I think it's important too, because what we also don't want to do is make academia or intellectual things seemingly non-Black things.
No, that's
Right.
not. Yeah.
Right. And which is not what you were saying, of
right.
course. Right. But I'm saying something a little different. I'm saying, for example, like if we're talking, I won't change my vocabulary, right? If I go to a black church in the country, I'm not going to change my vocabulary. But here's why. Because what people have not understood, and most people would say, well, of course you're going to change your vocabulary because that's a different audience. No, because the assumption of their intelligence is in my willingness not to change my vocabulary. And
hold on, the assumption of your intelligence
and theirs.
Their audience intelligence. Right.
Oh,
Right.
If not, I have assumed them ignorant by being kind to them.
I see that.
But I don't hear it that way.
But it functions that way.
But it doesn't function that way if I go to some place where the vernacular is different from. If I go to Paris, am I going to speak English?
You say you want to speak the language of the people.
Right.
The irony is most Parisians know English.
Right.
So it's actually English folks who don't know French.
You keep making his point.
I know.
And this is an important point, because if I go home, right, if I go home where these folks are quote unquote blue collar workers, and I think that's problematic too.
Yeah.
Right. And if I say something like, the vicissitudes of life are different, but oh my God, I can't say that to them. Well, why can't I? Why can't I?
Right.
See, the assumption is these people don't have dictionaries.
I don't think it's a matter of intelligence, though.
It's not a matter of intelligence. Right. It's a matter of my assumption of their intelligence.
Right.
But I don't think.
Right.
Or is it a matter of him trying to relate to an audience so that it'll be more communal and engaging from the offset?
But let's be careful, though, because if we're not careful, we'll make that quintessential error that white folks have made, that because a person is of a certain economic status, they're of a certain intellectual status as well.
So I have to speak down to them, as opposed to
but
speaking down.
But does speak down
that's right,
mean that you're not intelligent?
No, the point is don't speak down.
Right.
Speak the way. Here's where you know.
But that's what I'm saying. I speak a bunch of different ways.
Right. But these are the same people who, if I couldn't use this language, these are the same people who read the Bible. Now you're talking about a hard book.
Right.
Right. If these folks can read the Bible, right, then I can certainly use any vocabulary I can choose anywhere. Right. Because the Bible is an intellectually difficult book to read. But historically, these folks who had never been to school anywhere, right, were finding their spiritual home in the pages of this text, right? And where the language is super duper elevated.
Right.
Right. And so what I'm really saying is there are ways subconsciously, right, that we've played into these tropes of categories and these tropes of poverty in such a way where we have insulted ourselves and our own people by seemingly, quote unquote, trying to relate to them. Right. What I'm going to be is I'm going to be the excellence that these same people sent me to get.
That's true. We have been trained, though, to adapt.
I'm going to bring back to that. That's right. And so we call it all these words.
But that's true. But the adapting goes in many ways. For example, if I go to, I'm afraid of saying a high-end mall because we had such a discussion about the Lenox Mall today. But if you go to a high-end mall, right?
Even the term high-end.
That's true. But you do know what I mean.
I do know what you mean.
Okay.
And I know what it implies.
Right. So. And I don't want to go there and have trouble. Right now, I should have the liberty in being able to dress any way that I want.
Sure.
And that could be like how I dressed all through COVID. You know how that was when nobody was looking. But when I go to a mall or when I go to a space where I don't feel like being bothered, because it's not me, it's them. So I want to have a smooth day. So I do adapt.
What do you mean it's me, and who are the me and who?
Well, so if I go to the mall, I don't want to be followed. I don't want people to think so I dress a different way. It's not all the time, but sometimes if I don't feel like being bothered with somebody who thinks that I'm some way, or I go into a high-end grocery store and when I was in COVID, gear, I call it COVID gear. Just you just put on anything because you had the mask, nobody could tell who you were. And someone laughing over there, and. They think I'm with Uber, or they assume that I'm there shopping for someone else just because of the way that I'm dressed. Right. So I adapt. I do adapt. Black women, black men adapt with their hair.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes. The problem is all this adaptation, and you're right. All this adaptation is us trying to figure out how to keep white people convinced that we are worthy of being in their space.
I think that's perspective.
Well, okay.
Right.
Well, the question becomes, why has it been so difficult for us to maintain high-end malls in the Black community?
That's been a whole conversation that I have talked about today that I didn't even really understand.
And so let's answer.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because if we're shopping at Lenox, why couldn't we, and we are, why couldn't we do that same thing in terms of in the Black community? Because we're the one going. Why couldn't we drive over here in the Black community and do it?
Mm-hmm.
You can.
Right. Why isn't it there then?
Because the white marketing has made it such that they make us think that we should go there. Right?
He's like,
Right, you're about to make my point again.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Because also, part of what we mean by high end is that we do it in the context of whiteness.
Well, high end to me was because the stores themselves. I wasn't thinking about the location because I didn't understand where I was.
I'm just showing you how location,
right, yes,
and the choice of
so
the
I
stores.
thought Lenox was, it's not in the Black neighborhood?
It's Buckhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phipps, but yeah, none
It's
of
like the
yes.
Beverly Hills of Atlanta.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't know where I was. I just knew the stores.
I thought it
But
was
it's-
just Black neighborhood.
So
That's why all the
if
Black folks was there.
if the quality of the product is in the community is not the same level of product that I'm looking for, then I've got to go to a quote high-end store
Sure.
to get
That's absolutely right. And I'm asking, why has it been difficult for us to maintain these spaces in these stores whereby the quality is the same? Why has that been so difficult to maintain in a Black conceived space?
Right. Why?
Right. Because some of what we're calling quality and some of what subconsciously we associate with quality, we associate with whiteness.
So,
I like Professor. I understand what you're saying.
Oh, we do it even with
Right.
schools. There's a pride Black people have in sending children to white schools that we do not have in sending kids to Black schools. It's the kids who are excited about going to the Black schools. The parents
you got
boast.
that right. You got that right.
Listen,
I
I've
think-
been there
I
30
mean, I
years.
know.
You got that
And I
right.
understand.
You got that right.
So I went to an HBCU and didn't graduate. But also somebody that grew up in a Black household that centered Blackness, like some of the things you're talking about and some of the perspective, like I understand the logic of it, but because it was so far from my reality, the logic kind of doesn't make it's
Sure. And all I'm
it's a-
suggesting
it's a-
today
an
is
off-street sentence.
it was very close to your reality. It's just people were not explaining the pieces of it in this way. Because I'm like you. I grew up in an all-Black household, right? I grew up in an all-Black. But there are all kinds of ways that we hated Blackness. There are all kinds of ways that we despise Black. But nobody announced it as that. In fact, people tried to pull it off as if we were loving Blackness. Right. From the hair alterations to the Jerry curls, which I had, et cetera, because I wanted my hair to flow a certain kind of way, right? Nobody ever told me, and they didn't know. Our folks didn't know that the problem with Black hair, right, is not the texture. The problem with Black hair is the wrong comb.
That's right. The wrong tools.
Right.
How about there is no problem with Black hair?
Well, let's start
That's what
there.
I was told.
But that's only going to
You know
be
what I
true. That's only going to be true. That's only going to be true when we aesthetically, right, are in a place where we can construct the nature of our hair as glorious as is.
Right.
Right. And we're a long way from it. Some folks are doing it, but it's small pockets of people. Again, I teach at Clark,
Right.
everybody is altering.
But we're a
Right.
small segment of the population too, right? So there's always going to be small pockets.
Right. But and what I'm suggesting is there are ways that we are still in this game, right, of doing the alteration of Blackness, right, or doing the alteration of Black forms and features for the sake of a certain level of validation and applause. That's not the reason it gets
But
announced.
is it validation and applause for the white folks?
Absolutely.
Sometimes
I question that, man.
Yes, sir.
Because I think it's validation within our culture. I think sometimes our
Yes.
culture is distorted and has some not so positive expectations.
Yes, we're saying the
and
same thing,
standards,
brother. Because
right?
we'll teach a kid, hey, listen, when you go to this interview, don't you wear your head looking like that.
And so
See, that's a problem already.
it's a problem. And there's going to be somebody that says, I'm going to wear my hair like this, and they're going to either hire me or fire
not.
me, right?
Right.
Because I'm black, and it is what it is.
Yes. And the thing I want us to get to is not to have the conversation at all.
But sometimes,
But
especially
I feel,
for
but
black-
that's a American cultural conversation, right?
No, as a black people, they don't tell white boys, listen, comb your hair.
But they will
They do
tell
say
them
cut
to
it.
cut it, right? Yeah.
They will say cut it.
they will
Uh-huh.
say-
They
They
will
will.
say cut it. If there are mandates, like if you go into the army, you're gonna have to cut your hair.
Sure.
Right.
If you're going to corporate America, at least there was a time where if you went to corporate America, you had to cut your hair a certain way.
Or go to that interview knowing that you may not get that job, and you had a higher percentage of chance of getting that job if you did cut your hair.
Sometimes
So,
that's true.
yeah.
Sometimes that's true. Right. But I think the problem that we're dealing with is we're still trying to figure out how to break into these bastions of places, right, that we think ultimately have the answers for our salvation.
Well,
In other words,
but many times it's the answers to many people's pockets, right? Because if I go to a law firm, right, someone's gone to law school and then they go to a high-end law firm and they want to get that starting salary of $230, and they just graduated from.
sure.
They are
sure.
going. A black
Sure.
woman is going.
Sure.
She's probably going
Sure.
to change that hair
Sure.
to get the job, and when she crosses over, she'll get her locks.
Yes. What I want us to do, though, is I want us to stop asking black children where you're going to work when they come out of college. I want us to stop doing that, because when we go to Stanford's graduation, nobody asks those children who's going to hire them.
They already know.
Nobody asks those kids.
They already know before they graduate.
Nobody asks them kids none of those questions.
So,
Yeah.
right, and because there are assumptions on the table.
but I also feel
Right.
like now there's more of a trend, and I know, like for me, I grew up in a space where you don't go to college to get a job, right? You go to college to figure out, to learn the tools, to create something, right? To develop the networks so that you can create something for yourself, right? And I know that's a little different, but I know, especially now, because of technology, because of all the resources that are people have in their hand with a simple cell phone, right? That they're creating their own industry, and own pathways versus going to college to get a job.
And to get rich. See, part of our issue too is I don't
think
just want a job,
Right.
right? Which means, as you said, and it's true, if I want this job that's going to pay me $230,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do these alterations, right? Versus a job that might pay me $90, right? And I can function as myself. Most people would say, "Oh, of course I'm going to take this $230," but it's at the expense, right? It's at the expense of something. Like I worked at Clark now for 30 years, right? And
Do you see a more of a trend to take that 90?
no, I don't, and
No.
that's my problem.
Right, they
No,
just
I
do-
don't.
You don't see that?
No, absolutely not.
No, they're
not my
they're taking
students.
the $230.
Hell no.
I mean, 90 and 230. I mean, I understand. Like,
Absolutely
yeah.
not.
Like-
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I took this
but
job
do
at
you
Clark.
see do you find that more of them are more inclined and more conscious of creating paths for themselves, making sure there's a freedom in their positions that allow them to have peace of mind to
No, I don't.
they about that grind?
No, I hear more of that among our age people. No, most of 90% of my students are talking about, like, I got to make this paper. I need this paper. Our young people, and of course there are always a few exceptions, right? But in general, our young people are unbelievably money obsessed.
Now that
But it's
is-
in the cultures, in the music. I mean, money obsessed. Right. But I get it. It's not like I don't know where it came from.
Is it a
Right,
means to an
right.
end, like to get the money and then
You
do what you
know.
want, or is it like get the money and keep making money? Like, you know what I mean?
Folks often reference people like a Rick Ross, like folks who just are Oprah. I mean, those
Right.
are
Those types.
those are the folks that people are aspiring towards. But again, I get it because we created this. Our music created it. Our spirituality created it. Heaven is a very, very, very patriarchal place.
True.
Heaven also is an unbelievably economically imbalanced place. Streets of gold. You know how much gold it would take? And who in the world would waste that mineral doing that?
Yo.
Pearly gates.
Hold up.
I mean, if you really think about it, right?
The economics are in heaven.
It's oh my God.
That's not what Wakanda looked like.
Well, we got to be careful there too. Yeah, we got to be careful there too. Yeah.
Right.
I know we're like,
And I'm just curious about the adapting part. So I think, and so I'm not refuting you at all. I'm thinking about. So let's say there was a gig that was going to pay me $230, and I had to shave my beard. I love my beard.
It's very nice.
Thank you.
Would you do it?
Not as pretty as his. I would do it because I would not necessarily, though I love my beard, I'm not necessarily tied to it enough that I feel like I could lose my beard and still be myself.
Right. I understand.
So just when I think about what you're saying, and I try to look at that, from my perspective, there may be people who may not be tied to if they have to cut their locks, right? They may not be tied to those locks and making that change or adapting to get that particular gig.
90% of the people I know and the kids I know, for $230, they're not gonna cut those locks. But I get it because
you're talking about 230,000.
Yeah, they're not gonna cut the locks. But it's because the locks give them a cultural currency in terms of aesthetics and beauty, right? That they absolutely will not sell. Now,
Is it a cultural?
It's personal in culture. Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is really in many ways why we do locks.
that's right.
But part of the reason I cut my locks was because it became a pop culture thing. It became a vanity. It became
Everybody
an aesthetic.
So why would that make you
Right?
cut yours?
Because
He's the anti guy.
that's part of it because everybody was doing it and I was like, I don't want to do this no more. Right?
The meaning of it
and
probably
the meaning of right.
was decreased.
Right.
But that motive is the wrong motive to cut them.
I mean, I said part of it.
Okay, give me the other part.
We better be vulnerable now.
Open it up.
This is the vulnerable space.
Your mic is open.
Open your heart.
I'm looking at the camera. I'm looking at. Is it time for this episode? Like, there were some changes that I needed to have happen in my life.
What was her name?
Oh, yeah. There you go.
You don't have to tell her.
There were some changes that I needed to have happen in my life.
We're gonna
And
leave it
those
there,
locks had
right?
to go.
And then
Right? I needed to clean myself up. Right?
Uh-oh. Oh, that wording. I didn't even have to look.
Right?
What makes you think you were unclean? Can I say it for you?
Because I was doing some foul stuff.
Okay.
I was doing some foul stuff.
So you're cleansing energy?
I was cleansing energy.
Physical, and inside,
yeah,
outside.
Inside, outside. When I had my locks, I was walking in very Pan-African representation. Also, as a statement of counterculture, right? As it became more of a pop culture inclusion, like I said, it combated, sort of rubbed, and did not agree with what I was trying to represent. And I rocked them for a while. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a little twist thing,
They were down your back. Because they're different locks. There's small locks. They're in between stages. Then there's the big
committing to.
Yeah. Then there's
Like-
there's the top of locks. That
Yeah.
some people
Yeah,
say
it wasn't
look
like-
neat. There's a type of locks that lock up on themselves. So what did you have?
Oh, I had locks down past my ass.
And they locked on its own, or you twisted them on
Some twists, but it was
It was an array of locks.
yeah.
All right.
It was an array. Like my wife would have been like, nah. She would walk by me. Right.
Oh no.
But it sounds like she didn't walk by you, right? Was that part of
No,
it?
he cut him off.
Yeah,
No,
right. Yeah, he
way
cut him
before,
off.
way before.
Oh, way before that.
And it wasn't
Okay.
for her.
Okay.
I mean, so yeah, that's
I get what you're saying. I mean, on so many levels. And again, it makes sense to me because again, locks carry a kind of they carry a kind of currency aesthetically, right? Because also they can grow long.
That is true. Black on black on black. He's
Right.
quoting his own book.
It's length that we're looking for. And how do you know? Because we always got to grow past the in between stage.
right.
We say,
That's
what's
what I
the in
said.
between stage? What is that?
It's
In between when they'll flow and when they don't.
You know,
or when the scalp shows and when it doesn't. I find that with women too.
Sure.
'Cause I've
Mama
worked
would
in the
call
natural
it-
hair care industry for years, and think sister locks, for example, that beginning stage or regular locks, you see the scalp and women don't like that.
Sure.
So
I understand.
that's a very big
I
part of it
understand.
aesthetically
I understand.
Well, before I grew my locks, my mom had locks, and one of the reasons I was inspired to grow my locks was because her locks at some point they got they got past the in between stage, but they never got long. But I just love the way she walked because she rocked that in between stage and maybe because it was that in between stage that most people aren't comfortable with, it made her walk taller. It made her gait a little more prideful.
Oh, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
And I love seeing her.
Right.
I love seeing her in that stage doing that because it felt like it did something for her, and I remember wanting that.
Yes. Also, what's the texture of your mother's hair?
He's making points. Right.
Which matters for black people.
Just like mine.
I think it matters less lately.
up.
I mean,
Shut
then
up.
in the 80s.
See,
Then in the 80s and 90s, right?
see, now, of course, the thing brothers
It's
are doing
different.
is just like nothing.
Right.
Just watch it and do nothing. Don't comb it. Don't do nothing.
Exactly.
Just maybe a line, but don't do nothing. Don't touch
yeah,
it. Don't no comb it. Don't pick nothing. Right. Which I think is really hot.
Yeah.
Right. But certainly most employers don't.
Right.
Right.
And like I could say, like I lost jobs because like literally went into an interview, had the whole thing. It's like, we'd love to hire you. I was working in youth development. She was like, sister, she was like, what you saying, this off the record, I can't hire you because of your hair. The parents, if they make an automatic, association
Right.
with weed and illicit behavior.
Sure.
I'd have to make an automatic assumption to call the EEOC at that point, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You choose your battles.
Yeah.
And somebody else was gonna hire me because I was good at what I did.
That's true.
Right? I didn't believe that I needed their job. I know that who I am and somebody else needs me, wants me. I'm good.
Yeah. But we all have that hair story.
Sure.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, amazing
Every
hair
single
stories.
one of
Yeah.
us.
And
Absolutely.
I've been told along the way, my hair is inappropriate. When a coworker told me when I was working at Court TV, I was also told my hair looked like Raggedy Ann. Now we're talking the 90s. People weren't natural. My mom has
Right.
never relaxed her hair. So growing up, that isn't something that I saw. But when I got to college, that was the first thing that I did. You would have thought. I mean, and probably had my hair grown down my back. I might have still kept a relaxer, but it was never that way. So I'd always been natural. But then when this whole natural thing came in, that's, it all kind of met. I was slightly ahead of my time. But it's always a consideration, even right now. If I have to do some type of work in a couple of weeks, if it's a white show, I might change my hair. If it's a black show, I can stay just like this.
And see, it gets tricky because, again, what I've seen on campus is when people ask for natural hair, especially women, right? But even guys too, when people ask for natural hair, they mean a certain texture of natural hair. Because the people whose hair is what we traditionally think of as like really tightly coiled, like really what folks historically call nap, People don't ask them, oh yeah, wear your nappy, wear that, right? People tend to ask for natural hair from people whose natural hair, right?
It's slightly looser.
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering, you've been in Atlanta for 30 years.
Right.
And many people all over the world have migrated in this, the reverse migration down to Atlanta. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, has Atlanta been, and can it be, an example for how to get it right, or for Black folks in terms of how they see themselves in this world? Or have you found otherwise? Has this Mecca that people know it as, outside and inside, been what you thought it would be?
I'll answer that this way. A lot of people are believing that folks are moving from the north back south in general, right? And Atlanta certainly being one of such places because of economic conditions. Like, it's just entirely too insane to live in DC now, entirely too insane to live in New York City, et cetera. But I think I might want to posit a different possibility. I think subconsciously, Black folks are coming back south because in moving north, there is something we gained, yes, but there's also something that Black folks lost going north. And one of those things is called community. And ritual. Woo! Right? I think Black folks are coming back home in order to find community and in order to do ritual. Meaning when we gather ourselves together, right, and we drink on the front porch, right, when we gather ourselves together and we have church, you don't know if it's going to end at 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30, all of these ritual formations really sustain Black existence. It's hard to find these sometimes in pockets in the North because the land is not ours. And because the land is not ours, sometimes we own small pockets of it, but because the communal land very often is not ours, our gathering was very limited, right? But in coming back south, one of the things that the South offers, even as an idea, right, is this notion of our ability to gather in large numbers. And the gathering is really what's going to charge Black spirit. And I really think it's the recharging of Black spirit that Black folks are looking for in coming south again. And I think Atlanta offers that possibility because of the Black colleges here, Black churches here, et cetera, and just space. Space has everything to do, I think, with the reason Black folks are migrating back to the South. And quite frankly, also, I think it will create a voting bloc. Right? The ability for us to say, hey, this is where we live now. This is who we are. And the ability for us to elect our own representatives because we live in this little area here and it's primarily Black, I think will be enormously powerful.
And with that, we thank you, bro.
Thank y'all for having me.
We know we're not really supposed to do a wrap up here, but I'm doing it anyway.